With so much to know about farm ponds, it can be hard to understand exactly what it takes to keep one productive. So I caught up with Glen Gephart, who is arguably the state's expert on farm pond management. Glen is the co-author of Managing Pond Fisheries in Oklahoma. He put his knowledge to practice on his own pond and shows me firsthand how enjoyable a well-managed fishery can be.
Bluegill put that body sideways and put up a nice fight.
Oh yeah, look at that, how fat that is.
Yeah, these guys are nice and fat.
Oh wow. Now Glen, tell me, in your opinion, what is probably the best way to start stocking an existing pond?
Well, I know it sounds bad, but in most cases, the very best thing you can do with an existing pond is to kill all the fish out right off the bat. A lot of people think that sounds severe, but in most cases, you don't have exactly what you want to have in an existing pond. I went with fish species that will eat fish food. And by doing that, the limiting factor always in a pond is the amount of food available. And so you can bump that limiting factor way up by stocking fish that'll eat fish food.
Okay.
And
so you'd buy those at a commercial hatchery then?
You either buy those at a commercial hatchery or you work with someone like myself that can set up the cross yourself in the pond. You can buy these hybrid bluegill. If you've got a new pond, it's a perfect chance to set them up yourself at very little cost and produce, like I say, 10, 20,000 right off the bat. In future years, you're probably going to have to buy, or in my case, I've got two smaller ponds, one of which drains right into this pond, and I can set those up and then let them go for a couple of years and grow my own 3 to 4 inch hybrids and then stock them in here.
So you've become your own hatchery?
Yes, I've got my own hatchery, and that's the ideal way. When I look for an ideal pond, I look for a main pond and then a little small satellite pond, as I like to call it, where you can grow your fish. This is my satellite pond where I grow hybrid bluegill up to a size where they won't get immediately eaten in my main pond. So I grow them for 2 years and then move them into my main pond when they're 3-4 inches long. The other important thing to have on a pond is a spillway screen to keep fish from moving out of your pond when you don't want them to, especially if it's your primary pond. Something that will hold in most of the fish of any size. Down low, I've got a 1/4 inch, and then up high, I've got a 5/8 inch screen. And this keeps the fish from moving out when I don't want them to. I've also got a screen on my main pond so that all of my big fish can't leave during a big runoff event. This is often an overlooked item, and it's very important to have, or you will lose a lot of fish, especially things like hybrid bluegill, over your spillway during high water. We've got 2 different kinds of fish feed that I feed. This is a standard 36% protein floating catfish feed that's got about 10% fish meal, and everything will eat that, but I like to get my hybrid stripers to eat the higher protein, 40% with about 20% fish meal in it, because them being fish eaters, they do much better on it. I'll go ahead and feed some of this 36% first, and we'll get the hybrid bluegill up here. This is what makes the whole pond possible, is the amount of fish feed that I pour in here. I'll put in about 1,000, 1,500 pounds of fish feed a year. That is the limiting factor, is the amount of food available. So I've bumped that limiting factor way up, and therefore I've bumped the production of the pond way up. And that's what allows me to harvest 500 pounds a year out of a 1 acre pond, is the amount of fish feed I've got going in.
Oh yeah, look at that, boiling up. Now Glen, you talked about your situation. Look at that fish, wow. Your situation's a little bit unique here because of the fact that you can produce your own fish in 2 smaller ponds. But for somebody that's starting out with a pre-existing pond and they kill off the fish population and want to start off with the right balance and the right mixture of species, where can they, what are their options for getting fish? We have a department program that provides fish, but
Right, and that actually is a very good option. And I would say for 90% of the people or so out there, that's the best option.
Okay.
Because a lot of people may think it looks great, you know, to catch fish like crazy, but unless they're willing to, you know, keep a feeding program going, it won't necessarily stay excellent year after year after year. And so the advantage to going with the department is, number one, you get free fish.
Sure.
And number two, you get a balanced setup that typically you'd have to do a little management on the bass harvest, but other than that, you don't do any management by just going with their you know, 100 bass fingered. Usually they start with about 500 straight bluegill and stock those in, and then they come back in the next year with about 100 bass fingerlings per acre and about 100 channel catfish, and that creates a good fishing environment that, as long as the bass aren't over harvested, stays good for years and years to come.
Now, is that something that a person's going to have to do periodically, or is it just a one-time and then you're done? You don't ever have to do it again?
Well, it's typically a one-time stocking thing, although you do have to pay attention, like I said, to your bass harvest, because if you over-harvest the bass, then the bluegill produce too many offspring and get stunted. And that used to be the problem as people fished and kept fish a lot. Now, sometimes what we see is just the opposite problem, where people are being aware of not over-harvesting their bass, but in so doing, they don't harvest any, and you can actually see stunted bass, especially at that 8 to 12 inch size, where they need to switch from an insect diet to a fish diet. So you actually do have to harvest some of your bass and take them out if you want to keep a healthy growing bass population and get some lunker bass in there.
So it's just a myth and a wives' tale. If you want big bass, practice complete catch and release.
In a pond environment where you've got limited food. Again, you can think of the pond, food is the limiting resource. And so you go with your available food, and where you're going with the bass bluegill situation, your available food is pretty well fixed.
In the little time I spent with Glen, I rediscovered how fun fishing a pond can be, and how sound management can truly have a noticeable impact on even a small pond. The first step is to decide what your priorities are, and then form a plan to match. Glen wants to be able to catch lots of fish to eat, but some folks would rather manage for trophy fish. Well, whatever your priority, remember to have fun and include your friends.
Well, Glen, I want to thank you for letting us have a tremendous day on your pond. This has just been something I won't forget for quite a while.
Well, you're more than welcome, Todd.
Woo! Look at that. Oh, my goodness. Look at
Get
that.
this guy coming this way, and I'll give him I'll give him the quick two-handed land if I can get him to.
You want me to hold the rod and?
I'll just.
Golly, look at that.
Is a big channel catfish.
On cut bait hybrid bluegill we just caught an hour ago.
Yep, exactly.
That's incredible.
Well, that's what a pond can do with a little bit of management.
Well, sure.
And a little bit of fish feed.
I would think, from what I've seen today, if you wrote the book, it's good information.
Well, thanks very much, Todd.
Thanks to Glen. We'll see you next time, somewhere new in outdoor Oklahoma.
For additional information on today's show, or to purchase your own copy of Managing Pond Fisheries in Oklahoma, log on to wildlifedepartment.com.
What if? Oh man. Well, it's way over me. It's probably going to roughly be 13.5.
Right, almost 14.
He almost bottoms that out.
Almost.
Wow.
Looks like right there he's still. Looks like
13.5 somewhere.
13.5.